Welcome to Stories So Fall Asleep. Make yourself comfortable in bed, because today I'm going to accompany you on this incredible journey to a deep and relaxing sleep. Tonight, you will experience the story The Mystery of the Forgotten Cafeteria Notebook. Subscribe to the channel to follow new stories every day, and if you want to receive exclusive stories, become a member of our YouTube channel. Get access to continuing stories, exclusive stories, and much more by becoming a member. By becoming a member of our channel, you will also be entered into a monthly draw for an all-expenses-paid trip to the Bahamas with 2 companions. With each inhale and exhale, let my words transform into drowsiness and tranquility. Take a deep breath and exhale slowly. Feel your body relax. You have arrived. Now it's time to leave everything behind and just breathe. Inhale deeply, hold for a moment, and exhale slowly. Once again, breathe in and let go of everything that weighs you down, everything that doesn't need to be here right now. Let your body settle. Feel the mattress, the blanket, the silence around you. Now, just listen to my voice. There's nothing you need to do. Just listen and let each word lead you deeper. Come lighter. You are safe. You are at peace. And from now on, I'm going to tell you a story that begins in a simple place, but where time passes more slowly. Close your eyes, breathe deeply, and let your mind detach from the present. Feel the air entering your nostrils and leaving slowly, as if each breath were a veil that lifts, until it reveals an ancient and luminous world, full of wisdom, silence, and enchantment. Now, imagine yourself traveling gently back in time. Let the sounds of the modern world fade away, and listen to the silence. Quick warning: if you suffer from insomnia and anxiety, check out the first comment attached to this video, as I have a 7-minute trick that will eliminate your insomnia and anxiety today. Close your eyes. Take a deep breath. Imagine a quiet street where time seems to move with slow and silent steps. An old cobblestone street, slightly wet from the morning drizzle. The tall trees form a green tunnel over the street, and the wind that passes between the branches carries the sweet smell of ripe blackberries fallen on the sidewalk. It is a street hidden from the rush of the world. There, the buildings are low, with facades painted in shades of cream and light blue already a little faded by time. Some windows have planters filled with red gerberas and daisies that sway gently in the wind. The bicycles leaning against the walls seem to be asleep, as if they were also breathing slowly along with the day. In the middle of this street, almost invisible to those who pass by distracted, there is a small cafe. A place where the wooden door creaked slightly as it opened, as if to say, "Welcome," in its own secret language. The Café de Rua das Amoras. On the outside, simple. Inside, magical. Upon entering, the first hug comes from the smell. A mixture of fresh coffee being passed slowly, hot bread coming out of the oven, old wood that holds stories in its fibers. The sound is welcoming. The soft tinkling of cups being arranged, the slight dragging of wooden chairs across the worn floor, low laughter, conversations spoken almost in whispers, as if no one wanted to wake up the enchantment that hung in the air. The owner of the cafe, Mr. Alvaro, is a man with light eyes and gray hair, who seems to have been born to take care of that place. He always wears a beige apron, smeared with flour and coffee, and he smiles with the kind of smile that makes you feel like he's friends with him even without having exchanged a word. The tables are small, round, covered by crochet tablecloths. In the corners, stacks of old books are mixed with potted plants, golden lamps, and paintings hanging without much order. In every detail, a story waiting to be found. And at one of these tables, near the large window that overlooks the street of blackberries, sits Clara. Clara is a young woman with brown hair, almost always tied up in an awkward bun. She wears simple, comfortable clothes, always with some soft color, such as light blue or olive green. He has attentive eyes, those who like to observe the world without haste. He always carries a sketchbook and a pen of black ink with him. Clara is an illustrator, and what he likes to do most is watch the people who enter the cafe. She doesn't know everyone's names, but she makes up little stories for each one. The man in the brown hat who always reads the old newspaper, maybe he's a former navigator? The girl with the flower in her hair who draws maps on napkins, perhaps she dreams of distant lands? For Clara, the cafe is more than a place to have tea and coffee. It is a stage of silent stories, a space where small miracles happen without fanfare every day. On that rainy morning, however, something different was about to happen. Clara entered the cafe as usual, shaking her umbrella at the entrance. Mr. Alvaro waved to her from behind the counter. The doorbell clinked lazily. Everything looked the same. But as she approached her favorite table, Clara noticed something strange. On the crochet towel, there was an object that was not hers. A notebook. A thick notebook with a blue cover, a little worn at the edges, like a traveler who has crossed many paths. Clara looked around. No one seemed to pay attention. The cafe followed its usual slow dance. Low laughter, the steam from the coffee rising in spirals, the soft light streaming in through the window. She hesitated for a moment. Then he sat down and pulled the notebook closer. The touch of the cover was rough, but curious, like an old letter that unintentionally falls into your hands. Clara opened the first page, and there began something that would change his days, and maybe his way of looking at the world. Inside the notebook, in calmly drawn letters, were short stories. Stories of ordinary people, of small scenes, of hidden feelings. Each page was like a door to a secret universe. Clara smiled without realizing it, and time, that slow time of Rua das Amoras, seemed to stop completely around her. It was as if the entire coffee had held her breath, waiting for her to continue reading. And Clara, with an open heart, accepted the silent invitation of that forgotten notebook. From that moment on, their days would never be the same, because when you learn to see the stories hidden in ordinary days, you never walk alone again. It wasn't big, nor flashy. If one were to pass quickly along the uneven cobblestone sidewalk, they might not even notice the old wooden door, the small hand-painted sign, or the windows full of flowers. But for those who looked with an open heart, coffee was like a soft beacon, lit for those who needed refuge and calm. Early in the morning, the smell of baked bread and ground coffee escaped through the cracks in the door and spread across the block, mingling with the sweet scent of blackberries that fell lazily from the trees lining the street. The bell hanging over the door rang a discreet jingle at each entrance. And Mr. Alvaro, with his stained apron and welcoming smile, was always there, cleaning a cup or organizing a new vase of flowers on a makeshift shelf. His eyes, though covered by thick spectacle lenses, shone with gentleness. He seemed to know each client not only by name, but by the kind of silence they carried. Inside the cafe, everything seemed to be made to welcome. The tables were made of aged wood, each one different from the other, as if they had been collected over many lifetimes. The towels were made of delicate crochet, handmade by a lady who, according to what they said, had traveled the whole world and always returned to that street. On the walls, paintings hung without much order showed landscapes of golden fields, portraits of strangers smiling, and old maps of imaginary lands. The plank floor creaked softly, as if whispering memories with each step. And in the corners, stacked books seemed to form silent little towers of forgotten wisdom. There were books on gardening, poetry, astronomy, and even cooking. Some with handwritten dedications, others with flower petals pressed between the pages. The wall clock, with its already faded golden hands, marked the hours with a lazy tick, slower than usual. But no one there seemed to care. On Rua das Amoras, time was not in charge. He just followed. Clara used to always arrive at the same time, just before noon. He brought with him his worn canvas bag, full of notebooks, pencils, paints, and dreams. His steps were light but firm, his curious but shy gaze. He liked to sit at the same table, the one at the window, overlooking the street and its thick-trunked trees, where bluebirds sometimes played among the branches. That window was his portal to the world. It was there that Clara drew, that he observed, that he dreamed. From her table, she saw the everyday characters that made up the scenery of Rua das Amoras. There was Dona Helena, the florist with hands always dirty with dirt and a sincere smile, who stopped every morning to adjust the noose of a rebellious vine. Mr. Salgado, retired, who took his dog for a walk without haste, stopping to talk to anyone willing to listen about the old days. The girl with red braids who carried a basket of books, balancing on the paving stones as if each stone were a secret island. Claire did not know their names, but I knew his gestures. Your habits, their stories made up. For her, the cafe was more than walls and chairs. It was a small universe of invisible encounters, of silences full of meaning, of precious moments kept like shells in the sand of memory. On rainy days, like the one that was just starting to form, the coffee took on an even more welcoming tone. The drops hit the windows with rhythmic softness, like shy fingers asking permission to enter. The smell of coffee became more intense, mixed with the fresh perfume of the wet earth. Mr. Alvaro lit small lamps on the tables, creating golden islands of soft light in the middle of the dim light. The music, always low, mixed sounds of old piano with dreamy violins, filling the empty spaces with a melody that seemed to say, sit down, breathe. That morning, Clara drew absent-mindedly in her notebook. He scribbled the silhouette of a lady with a flowered umbrella, standing in the corner, smiling at a perched bird. The steam from her teacup rose in lazy spirals. On the other side of the glass, the trees swayed gently, as if dancing an invisible waltz. Everything was familiar. Everything was comforting. Until something changed. When she turned her gaze to her desk, Clara saw what she did not expect. There, resting on the crocheted tablecloth, was a notebook. Not yours. It was a thick notebook with a navy blue cover, with slightly frayed edges. A forgotten object, or left there on purpose. Clara frowned, looking around. No face seemed to notice the notebook. The young couple laughing softly at the next table. The man in the hat reading his old newspaper. The girl with the red braids dipped in a book. Nobody. It was as if the notebook had simply arisen, waiting, calling. Clara hesitated. His fingers hovered over the cape. There was something in that notebook that pulsated, a subtle presence, like a secret contained between the pages. She took a deep breath, and, overcoming his shyness, he opened the front page. What she found left her speechless. They were not ordinary bills, shopping lists, or notes. They were stories, short stories, handwritten in a beautiful but slightly cluttered handwriting, mixed with small drawings, dry leaves, stars, portraits of imaginary faces. Each story spoke of someone, of small moments, from gestures that could go unnoticed to hurried eyes. But there they came to life. Mr. Salgado, seen not as a lonely old man, but as a guardian of days gone by. The florist, described as a curator of smiles in the form of flowers. The girl with the braids, like a collector of rare words. Each story was a lens, an invitation to see the world with more tenderness. Clara turned the pages slowly. She felt like an archaeologist of feelings. Each line seemed to touch a forgotten part of itself, a part that believed that ordinary days could indeed be magical, that chance encounters could change entire trajectories, that silences could be as full of love as words. Outside, the rain was thickening. But inside the cafe, Clara was protected. I was somewhere else, in a world of unseen stories that now shone before her. And, deep in my chest, something new was beginning to be born. A sweet restlessness. A desire to discover more. To be part of that hidden world. Of maybe, who knows, add his own story to that forgotten notebook. And so, without realizing it, on that gray day of rain and the smell of coffee, Clara took the first step towards a journey that would change not only her days, but also the way she saw her own heart. The smell of the freshly fallen rain mixed with the aroma of hot coffee that escaped through the windows of the Café de Rua das Amoras, creating a welcoming feeling that seemed to embrace those who passed by. Inside the cafe, the world followed its calm rhythm. The sound of raindrops against the glass mingled with the distant clinking of cutlery, the soft creaking of wooden chairs, and the instrumental music that filled the space like a soft cloud. It was an ordinary day. Or at least, it seemed to be. Clara pushed the door slowly, feeling the delicious heat of the inside of the cafe wrap around her shoulders, still damp from the fine drizzle. Mr. Alvaro, from the counter, waved unhurriedly, with that calm smile that already said, "Sit down. Here you are at home." She answered with a shy nod and walked straight to her favorite table, the one, always by the window, where she could see the street, the bicycles leaning against it, the branches dripping with silver droplets. It was his little daily ritual, a space of time of his own, between work and dreams. But that day, something made her stop. On the white crochet tablecloth, there was something new. A notebook. It wasn't his sketchbook. It was another. A full-bodied notebook, with a dark blue cover, worn at the edges, with light marks like scars left by time. Clara frowned. He looked discreetly around. The cafe was as usual, a half-dozen customers scattered among tables, a couple reading the same newspaper, a lady knitting near the counter, the young man with headphones typing fast on his laptop. No one seemed to have noticed the notebook. No one seemed to be looking for him. Curious, Clara pulled out her chair, hung her bag on the backrest and sat down slowly. The notebook was still there, silent, as if it was waiting for her. She ran her fingers over the cover, feeling the rough and welcoming texture of the material. There was a faded fabric ribbon marking some page in the middle. And in the lower right corner of the cover, almost erased, the discreet design of a star. Clara bit her lower lip. She felt a slight butterflies in her stomach. It was as if that simple object hid something much bigger than it seemed. Something made of memories, or secrets, or dreams. She opened the notebook slowly. The first page was blank, with only a small scribble in the corner. It looked like a hand-drawn sheet. On the second page, finally, words. And what words? The handwriting was cursive, elegant but simple, with small unevenness that denounced the emotion of the writer. The lines danced softly on the yellowed paper. The first story had no title. It began like this. Today, I saw an old man sit in the shade of the great mulberry tree, as if visiting an old friend. He ran his fingers over the torso, as if recognizing every groove. His eyes were full of things that no one could see. I wondered how many autumns have passed over his shoulders. Clara read slowly, absorbing each word as if enjoying a hot chocolate on a cold day. It was a small story. Almost nothing happened. And yet it said so much. He spoke of time, of nostalgia, of silent encounters. He turned the page, and he found another story about a woman who, every morning, left a small bouquet of wild flowers stuck to the fence of the playground in the square. No one knew who it was, or who the flowers were for. Maybe for a child who has grown up, or for a love lost in time. Clara smiled without realizing it. His chest filled with a sweet warmth. The stories were short, simple, but so full of life. So full of emotion hidden in the small details that they almost always went unnoticed. He flipped through a few more pages. There were drawings too. Small pencil sketches. A bicycle leaning against a tree. A cat stretching over a pile of books. A cup of tea forgotten over an open window. A pair of soggy shoes at the entrance to the cafe. Each image was a story that continued in the mind of those who saw it. Each scribble seemed to pulsate with possibilities. Clara stopped on a page marked by the fabric ribbon. There he found something different. A ticket, written in a smaller, more hurried handwriting, almost like a whisper. If you found this notebook, it's because you also believe in small miracles. The story is now yours. Clara felt a soft shiver go up her spine. The whole cafe seemed to quiet. The sound of rain against the windows, the light sizzle of the coffee machine, the breathing of customers. Everything seemed to have been muffled for that moment. She closed the notebook and hugged it to her chest. He felt as if he had found an invisible map. An invitation. A calling. He spent the afternoon there, between sips of tea, lost glances out the window and pages turned carefully. Mr. Alvaro brought a slice of apple cake and left it on his table with a smile, without saying anything, as if he understood that there, between Clara and that notebook, something was happening that did not need to be interrupted. When the sky began to darken and the dim lights of the cafe lamps came on one by one, Clara decided she would take the notebook, not for theft, but because I felt, deep down, that this was what he wanted. Or rather, that this was what the person who had left him wanted. He carefully put it in his purse. She felt the delicious weight of the notebook in her lap as she finished her tea. And before leaving, he looked out the window one last time. The blackberries dripped with raindrops. The wind sang softly among the trees. And the cafe on Rua das Amoras seemed to smile at her, as if to say, "Now it's your turn. Continue the story." Clara smiled too. And he went out into the wet night, with a full heart, anxious hands, and with a soul ready to discover that sometimes the greatest treasures of life are hidden on the pages that no one pays attention to anymore. The rain was still falling, drawing small rivers along the uneven sidewalks of Rua das Amoras. Clara walked slowly, the hood of her jacket pulled over her head, her hands clasped around the bag where the blue notebook now rested. Each step was accompanied by a soft sound, the light creak of wet sneakers, the sigh of the wind crossing the alleys, the pattering of water on the rooftops. The whole world seemed to breathe slower that night, and Clara felt as if she was crossing not only the street, but an invisible portal to a new kind of life. When she got home, she left her umbrella running in the hall, took off her heavy shoes and walked barefoot on the tiled wooden floor. His small house smelled of lavender and old books. The walls were lined with bookshelves, books of all colors and sizes. Many of them found in fairs, secondhand bookstores, donations, gifts. Everyone carried some story, but none seemed as full of mystery as that blue notebook. Clara turned on a table lamp. The golden light filled the room with a warm calm, as if calling dreams closer. He sat on the sofa with a soft blanket thrown over his legs. He placed the notebook on his lap and opened it, his breath almost held with expectation. There, among those worn-out pages, something special awaited her. Something he felt, even if he didn't understand it yet. The first story he read was about an umbrella. Not an ordinary umbrella, but one that seemed to have a life of its own. The text read, "The yellow umbrella danced through the wet streets, changing hands without ever belonging to anyone. He was protecting an elderly man on a windy day. Then a mother and her young son. Then a young woman lost in thought. And when the son returned, it folded alone in a corner, waiting for the next rain, the next secret to protect." Clara smiled. It was a small story, but full of color, life, movement. He felt like he could see that umbrella spinning, jumping on the sidewalks, peeping secrets in the rain. He turned the page. Another story. This time on a park bench. No one remembered who had put the bench there anymore. But the bank remembered. He remembered the first kiss exchanged under the golden autumn leaves. Of the child who cried softly when he lost his blue balloon. Of the lady who every day at 4 brought seeds for the birds. It was as if the notebook gave voice to everything that was too small to be noticed, and yet too precious to be forgotten. Each page was a dive. Clara advanced slowly, as if walking along the shore of a serene lake, not wanting to scare away the glowing fish under the water. There was a story about a wall clock, which always stopped at the same time, at 5:23 p.m., because, according to the clock, it was the most beautiful time of the day. Another, about an abandoned toy store, where the puppets came to life at midnight and reenacted the games they had heard from children many years ago. And one on a tree with a wide crown, which wept golden tears in autumn, and laughed with white flowers in spring. Each story had a hidden tenderness. Each story seemed to say, "Look better. Feel it slower. Beauty lives where no one else looks." Clara read, and with each new story, she felt her chest widen. It was as if each line cleaned a dirty glass between it and the world. As if each word gave her back a forgotten vision, the ability to marvel. At one point, she closed the notebook on her lap. Not tired, but to savor what I was feeling. He looked around. His home looked different. The shadows on the walls seemed softer. The ticking of the kitchen clock seemed more musical. The creaking of the wind in the windows seemed like part of a great symphony I had never noticed before. Clara lay down on the couch, the blanket up to her chin. He hugged the notebook to his chest, and it stayed like that. Hearing, feeling, letting the stories blend into your own body. Then his mind, half awake, half dreaming, began to create. Imagined, a cup forgotten over a window, dreaming of the coffees he once served. An old shoe abandoned on the road, still remembering the dances he danced. An old weather vane that spins just to keep the music of the countryside alive. Clara smiled. The notebook was not just a storybook. It was an invitation, a mirror, a key to open a forgotten door within itself. The door of pure imagination. The one she, without realizing it, had locked between the bills to pay, the appointments, the routines. That night, she fell asleep on the couch. His head resting on his notebook. The sound of rain rocking your dreams. And in the dream, he walked along cobblestone streets where the trees whispered sweet words, and the lanterns twinkled like waking stars. At every corner, he found a new object whispering a story. And she listened to them all. With an open heart. As someone who finally remembers what he always knew, that every day, every gesture, every look hid a simple magic. A magic made of attentive eyes and a light soul. When morning came, Clara woke up to the pale light coming in through the window. The notebook is still on his chest. The world outside was still raining, but inside her, something had changed forever. Now she knew. The stories never end. They just wait. By eyes that know how to see. By hands that know how to welcome. For hearts that know how to dream. And she, Clara, was now part of it. She was also a storyteller of small wonders. The day dawned with a timid light. The rain had stopped, but the world still seemed wet, as if it were sighing after a long, silent cry. On Rua das Amoras, the ground reflected small pieces of the gray sky. The leaves scattered on the ground shone like wet gold coins. The smell of wet earth, mixed with the sweet scent of ripe blackberries, was so strong that it almost seemed like an embrace. Clara woke up slowly. The blanket was still wrapped around his body. The blue notebook still rested on her chest, as if it were part of her now. She yawned, stretching, feeling a nice warmth on her fingertips. There was something different in the air. Something she couldn't name, but it made her heart beat in a new rhythm. Slower, deeper, like a song only she could hear. He stood up, straightening his messy hair with one hand, and walked to the kitchen to make some coffee. As the water boiled, she looked out the window. The trees swayed lazily, and a black cat crossed the street with the elegance of someone who dominates his little world. It was a perfect day to continue immersed in the mystery of the notebook. With a hot mug in her hands, Clara returned to the sofa. She sat down with her legs crossed, placed the notebook on her lap and opened it, full of expectation. The smell of old paper mixed with the aroma of coffee created an environment of absolute comfort. She flipped through some familiar pages, rereading passages that had moved her the night before. Each sentence seemed to have even more color, more weight, as if the words had matured overnight. It was then that, as I turned another page, something fell from the middle of the notebook. Something small. Something unexpected. A piece of paper, folded carefully. Clara picked up the note with trembling fingers. The paper was thin, yellowish, with marks of old folds. It seemed like something important. Something left there on purpose. She took a deep breath. And it did. The handwriting was the same, cursive, pretty, a little tilted to the right. But this time, it wasn't a story. It was a message. A whisper from someone who seemed to have been waiting for her for a long time. The note read, "If you found this notebook, it is because you carry within you the rare ability to see what others forget. Now it's yours. Add your stories. Continue the invisible line that connects us all." Clara stood still. He felt his heart take a small leap in his chest. The world around him seemed to freeze for an instant. The kettle whistled softly in the kitchen. The hands of the clock seemed to move more slowly. Outside, the wind beat the leaves with lazy movements. But inside her, everything was spinning. Everything lit up. She reread the note several times. Each word seemed to pulsate with a life of its own. He carries within himself the rare ability to see what others forget. That was it. It had always been that. Since she was a child, Clara was enchanted by what went unnoticed. The colors hidden in the puddles of water. The cracks in the walls that looked like they drew secret maps. The sound of the footsteps of ants marching in the garden. The sound of rain hitting different cans in the street. She saw beauty in the little things. He always has. But I never knew that this was something rare. Something special. The note seemed to give a name to a part of her that had always existed, but which she had never fully understood. A silent part. A magical part. And now someone she didn't know, had recognized it. She is entrusted with the task of continuing. To spread beauty. To preserve what is small, silent, and invisible. Clara smiled. He felt his eyes burn. It was such a sweet joy that it seemed almost sadness. A gratitude beyond measure. He decided right then and there that he would accept the invitation. That he would write. That he would add to the notebook the stories that his eyes kept. Stories of moments that could be lost forever, but that, thanks to her, would gain another life. He stood up decisively. He took his favorite pen, the one with black ink, fine point, and returned to the couch. He opened the notebook on a new blank page. She felt a good chill run down her spine. And he began to write. His first story was about the brown-hatted gentleman who read old newspapers every day in the cafe. She described him as a time traveler. Someone who, with each yellowed page, visited days that had already passed, but that still kept warmth in their memories. She wrote about the way he adjusted his glasses on the tip of his nose. About how he smiled discreetly when he found some good news lost between the pages. About how his eyes, despite the wrinkles, still carried the stubborn hope that the world could be good. Later, Clara wrote about the knitting lady. The one who sat near the counter, knitting colorful scarves even on hot days. He described how the needles glowed in the soft light of the coffee, how wrinkled hands moved with the precision of someone who is not in a hurry, and how, from time to time, she stopped knitting just to observe the movement around her, as if she were also embroidering the stories of others on her woolen threads. Each story flowed like a gentle river. Every word seemed to have waited a lifetime to be written. Clara lost track of time. The coffee mug cooled next to him. The afternoon light turned golden, then orange, then dark blue. But she didn't even notice. Only when her eyes began to sting with sleep did she stop. He closed the notebook carefully, and for a moment she stared at him on the table. It wasn't just an object. It was a living being now, full of sighs, laughter, tears, and silences. It was a piece of the world that pulsated in her hands. That night, before going to sleep, Clara left the notebook open on her bedside table, like someone who leaves a window ajar for the wind to tell secrets during the night. And he slept with a smile on his face, because I knew, deep in my heart, that something wonderful had begun, and that from then on, every little moment of life would also be a story to be written. The next morning was calm and golden. The sun, still shy, drew fine rays through the cracks in the curtain of Clara's room. The smell of freshly brewed coffee mixed with the soft scent of the old wood on the floor, slowly warmed by the incoming light. It was one of those days when everything seemed to invite a new beginning, and Clara felt it. Within her, something new had awakened, like a seed that silently begins to germinate underground. She stretched slowly, savoring the softness of the morning. His eyes went straight to the bedside table. The blue notebook was still there, open on the page where it had stopped the night before. Next to him, his black ink pen waited, patiently, like an old friend. Clara smiled. He got up and walked to the kitchen, his bare feet making small noises on the floor. He prepared a mug of chamomile tea, this time. I felt that I needed something calm, almost transparent, to accompany what I was about to do. Sitting back on the sofa, wrapped in a light blanket, Clara hugged the notebook as if holding a precious compass. There, among those pages, she had found something she didn't even know she was looking for. Something that gave meaning to his attentive eyes. Something that explained his love for the little things, for the silent scenes that so many let slip away. She opened the notebook to a new page. The tip of the pen touched the paper. And, without even having to think too much, she started writing. His first story of that new chapter was about coffee. About the Cafeteria das Amoras itself. He described the smell of bread coming out of the oven before 7 in the morning. The sound of the doorbell swaying in the wind. Mr. Alvaro's smile, which served more welcome than coffee. He described the shelf of forgotten books, the worn carpet at the entrance, the windows always open to the world. Every word seemed to spring straight from the heart. Then he talked about the people. Of the man who read old newspapers. Of the girl who drew maps on napkins. Of the boy with the red backpack who ran past every afternoon, leaving trails of laughter and clay. Each of them earned their place in the notebook. Each of them became history. Not because they did great things, but precisely because they were small walking miracles. Miracles of normality full of charm. Clara wrote slowly, respecting the rhythm of the words. There was no hurry. Each paragraph was like planting an invisible tree. A tree that would grow not on the ground, but in the heart of those who, one day, read those pages. Sometimes she stopped. I looked out the window. I saw the slow movement of the street, the lazy swaying of the leaves, the bicycles leaning against the poles, the dogs sleeping in front of the closed stores. And then he would go back to writing, capturing every little detail as if collecting rare shells in the sand. At noon, she closed the notebook for a moment. He felt the warmth of the tea still in his hands. He felt the sunlight warming his face. And he felt something inside his chest. A light peace. A sense of belonging. to be part of something bigger. Something that didn't need grand gestures or grand words. Something made of small moments, of small looks, of small smiles. That afternoon, Clara decided to leave. He took the notebook with him, inside his bag, protected between two books. I wanted to find new stories. She wanted to let the world whisper things to her. And she was ready to listen. The sky was clear, but the wind still smelled of old rain. Clara walked slowly along Rua das Amoras. Each step felt lighter than the last, as if the ground itself invited her to float. He passed by Dona Helena's flower stand. He saw the lady lovingly arranging a bouquet of daisies. Clara smiled, imagining how many stories those flowers would carry in their petals. Perhaps they would be taken to an apology, or to celebrate a new love, or, who knows, just to adorn a lonely window. He passed by the musical instrument store. He heard the shy sound of a guitar being tuned, and he imagined the song that instrument would still sing. The parties, the meetings, the tears and the dances that he would witness, silent. Every single thing his eyes touched now seemed to pulsate with possibilities. Everything had a soul. Everything had a history. It was enough to look closely. It was enough to listen with the heart. At the end of the street, Clara found an empty park bench. The same bank about which I had already read a story in the notebook. He sat there. He took the notebook out of his bag, and he began to write more. About the bank. About the wind playing at messing with children's hair. About the old dog who dreamed while he slept stretched out in the sun. About the girl who passed by with a bouquet hidden behind her back, smiling to herself. Writing was like breathing. It was no effort. It was nature. It was a necessity. It was pure joy. When the sun began to go down, dyeing everything gold and pink, Clara closed the notebook. He kept it carefully, and she walked back home with the feeling of carrying her own world inside her bag. A world made of invisible stories. A world she could now see better than ever. At night, lying in bed, Clara stared at the ceiling. I didn't want to sleep yet. I wanted to savor that new feeling. That quiet certainty that, even on the quietest days, something magical happened. Even in the most common routines, there was beauty. Even in the smallest gestures, there was poetry. Before closing her eyes, she whispered to herself, "History is everywhere. You just have to want to see it." And then he fell asleep, with the notebook next to the bed, with a full heart, with a light soul, with the certainty that he had started something that would never end. Something that would live in every dawn, in every attentive look, in every blank page ready to be filled. Dawn came slowly, as if the sky itself were stretching unhurriedly. A light mist covered Rua das Amoras, blurring the shapes, erasing the contours, making the world seem like a dream still incomplete. The trees looked like soft shadows, and the ground shone with the dew that the dawn had left behind, like a silent promise of freshness. Clara opened her eyes lazily. The room was immersed in a pale, bluish light. The blue notebook rested on the bedside table, and just seeing it, she felt her heart beat in a rhythm of quiet joy. She sat up on the bed, wrapped herself in the blanket, and stood there for a moment, breathing in the silence of the morning. She felt as if the world was waiting for her, as if something new, something good, was hidden on the other side of the door. And this time, she was ready to meet. After a hot shower and a strong coffee, Clara put the notebook in her bag and left the house. He wore a light coat, a soft scarf around his neck, and his favorite shoes, those already worn out on the ends from walking through unfamiliar streets. Rua das Amoras looked different that day. Maybe it was the light filtered through the fog. Or maybe it was Clara who had changed. Now, she walked not only with her body, but with her heart. Attentive, open, present. Each window seemed to tell a story. Each bicycle leaning against the trees seemed to keep a secret. Each step felt like a drumbeat in a silent parade of discoveries. She decided to go back to the cafe. The Café de Rua das Amoras was, for her, more than a place to have tea or coffee. It was a sanctuary, a shelter where words floated in the air like leaves in the wind. The doorbell rang with its familiar tinkling as she pushed the old wood. The smell of freshly baked bread, mixed with the warm aroma of cinnamon and ground coffee, enveloped her like a hug. Mr. Alvaro, behind the counter, smiled at her with the same tenderness as always, as if he knew that she had a pocket full of new stories to share, even without having to hear a word. Clara chose her usual table, near the window. She sat down, took the notebook out of her bag, opened it on the crochet towel, and took a deep breath. It was time to write some more. But before he could put pen to paper, something caught his eye. On the other side of the cafe, a boy of about 8 years old watched through the window with an expression of absolute enchantment. It was as if he saw something that no one else saw. Curious, Clara followed his gaze. Outside, on the sidewalk, a small scene was taking place. A gray cat, sitting very upright, stared attentively at a pigeon, which, in turn, looked back at him with the same solemnity. It was a silent battle of looks. The boy smiled, fascinated. Claire too. And at that moment, without exchanging words, she and the boy shared something invisible. A light thread, made of pure admiration for the simple and magical life. Clara opened a new page of the notebook. He wrote about that moment. About the boy with attentive eyes. About the solemn cat. About the fearless pigeon. About how sometimes, in the smallest corners of life, the most epic battles took place, and all without the rest of the world noticing. When she finished, Clara felt something grow inside her. An idea. A will. Perhaps she could do more. Not just observe. Not just writing. But to share. Multiply. Invite other attentive eyes to see as well. He thought about leaving stories. Little stories. Hidden around the city. Inside books on library shelves. Doubles on benches in squares. Stuck on lampposts. Hidden in flower pots. Small seeds of enchantment, waiting to bloom in the hearts of those who found them. She smiled to herself. It was a simple idea, but she was beautiful, and I felt it needed to happen. In the following days, Clara began her secret project. She wrote short stories on sheets of recycled paper, folded them carefully, and hid them in the places she loved. A ticket among the books of poetry in the library. Another in the market suggestion box. Still another in the pocket of his coat hanging on the hanger of the coffee shop. Stories of love, courage, hope, hidden beauty. At first she felt shy, almost guilty, like a child who gets up to a good mischief. But soon, the pleasure of imagining the smile of those who found his tickets overcame any shame. And so, little by little, the city was filled with its little invisible lights. Connections began to form. Clara noticed. Sometimes, someone would read a found story and smile into the void. Sometimes she would see a note being carefully tucked away in her pocket. Sometimes he would hear whispers about a mysterious note found in a coffee shop, a flower shop, a bus stop. No one knew who the author was. And it was better that way. Because it wasn't about her. It was about magic. Of kindness spread without a signature. Of the beauty that is born when there is no hurry, no name, no obligation. The cafe became his secret headquarters. It was there that he wrote new stories. It was there that I renewed hope. It was there that he realized that, even on gray days, even on hurried mornings, even on silent afternoons, life went on lighting small candles in the dark. It was enough to look. It was enough to believe. It was enough to be. And so, the girl who always saw what others forgot, now planted stories around the world, like someone who plants secret gardens in places where no one expects to find flowers anymore. The days passed like leaves carried by a light breeze. Each morning brought new smells, new lights on Rua das Amoras, and an increasingly strong feeling inside Clara that she was part of something beautiful, even if invisible. She continued to spread her little secret stories around the city. By the park benches, on the shelves of the bookstore, by the baskets of bicycles parked on the street. Always discreetly, always smiling to herself. And every time I left a note behind, I felt as if I had planted a small seed of tenderness in the world. On a gray afternoon, while having her tea at the Café de Rua das Amoras, Clara watched the street through the window. The low fog seemed like a soft veil over everything. The cars passed slowly. People walked huddled in their coats. Everything was calm, almost asleep, until she saw something small, but that made his heart race as if he had heard music. A lady with white hair tied in a messy bun stopped in front of the bench where Clara had hidden a story the week before. The lady sat down carefully. The bench groaned softly under its weight. She adjusted the bag in her lap and, next to her, her fingers touched the small envelope hidden under the wood. Curious, the lady picked him up. It opened slowly, and then he smiled. A smile so true, so deep that Clara almost cried just to see it. The lady kept the note inside her purse. Then she sat there for a while, looking up at the sky, as if seeing something that no one else can see. Something beautiful, something that is fresh inside. Clara felt a sweet lump in her throat. I didn't know that woman. I didn't know his story. But somehow she knew that this little piece of paper had come to her at the right time. That day, on that bench, two stories had met. And that was all. That was all that mattered. The emotion of that scene stayed with Clara for days. She thought of the lady as she walked through the streets. I thought about her while writing new notes. He thought of her as he looked at the world with even more attentive eyes. And the more he thought, the more he felt something grow inside him. Something hot, somewhat mild. Something that had no name, but that she knew was what they call happiness. It was not a happiness made of great parties or fireworks. It was a soft happiness, silent, made of stories exchanged without words, made of looks that cross and recognize each other, made of small gestures that change entire days. Clara began to notice more scenes like that, more invisible encounters, more lonely smiles when finding a ticket, more eyes shining discreetly among the daily rush. It was as if the world had suddenly learned to breathe a little slower, to feel a little deeper, to see what used to pass too quickly. On a sunny afternoon, Clara left a note on a bus bench. Sometimes, what seems lost is just the beginning of something beautiful. Hours later, while returning home, he saw a young man, with a backpack on his back, find the note. He read, smiled at the ground, and then looked up to the sky, as if he saw new possibilities drawn among the clouds. On another morning, he left a note inside a book of poetry in the library. There are verses hidden everywhere. Just read it with your heart. Later, he saw a young woman leafing through the book, finding the note, putting her hand on her chest as if holding an emotion that almost escapes. The stories touched hearts. She knew. Not because people came to thank you, not because they left tickets back, but because the eyes don't lie. And Clara, who knew how to see what others forgot, saw clearly. I saw the silent changes. I saw the small daily miracles. She also began to notice how her own stories changed. In the beginning, I wrote what I saw. Now, he also wrote what he felt, what he dreamed of, what I imagined it could be. It no longer needed great plots. A gesture was enough. A look, a piece of wind carrying leaves down the street. It was enough to feel. And so, the blue notebook was filled. Page after page. Story after story. Not to be read by crowds. Not to win applause. but to keep alive what was most important. The certainty that beauty exists, that goodness resists, that love can be sown even on the grayest days. On some nights, Clara would walk around the city just to leave notes. It was his secret ritual. The cold wind messing up your hair, the yellow light of the streetlights illuminating pieces of the sidewalk, the shoes beating a serene beat on the stone floor. She walked like a sower of dreams. No rush, no certain destination, just listening to what the world wanted to whisper that night. Sometimes he would stop in front of an empty square. He closed his eyes. I could smell the wet grass, the sound of a dog barking in the distance, the shy scent of flowers closed at dawn. And then he would leave a note, like someone who plants an invisible flower. The world has never seemed so full of life for Clara. It has never seemed so full of possibilities. It has never felt so alive. And deep down she knew, it wasn't just the world that had changed. It was her. It was his gaze. It was his way of walking, to write, to breathe. Now, Clara was an active part of the story that she had previously only observed. Now, she was also an author. Author of small daily miracles. Author of silent kindnesses. Author of smiles planted like flowers on the asphalt. The afternoon fell golden over Rua das Amoras, tinting the roofs, windows and tree trunks with a warm, almost liquid light. The wind played on the dry leaves, scattering small swirls along the corners of the sidewalk. The bicycles leaning against the poles swayed slightly, as if whispering to each other. And Clara walked slowly, feeling that this was one of those days when something different was about to happen. A day when the air smelled not only of flowers and warm bread, but also of anticipation. A day when the world seemed to hold its breath, waiting for a surprise. She entered the Café de Rua das Amoras with light steps, almost silently. The doorbell tinkled softly, like a whispered greeting. Mr. Alvaro, behind the counter, looked up and waved with a serene smile, as he always did. But this time, there was something else in his eyes. Something curious. Something accomplice. Clara sat at her usual table, near the window. He took the blue notebook out of his bag. He smoothed the cover with affection, and he prepared to write another short story. But before he could open the notebook, Mr. Alvaro approached. He brought a tray with a steaming cup of tea and a small brown envelope, yellowed by time. He placed the tray on the table. He looked at Clara with a mysterious twinkle in his eyes and said, "That was left here for you." And without waiting for an answer, he returned to the counter, whistling softly. Clara looked at the envelope. It was simple. No sender. No recipient. Only her name, Clara, written in a firm and elegant handwriting in the center. She felt her heart beat a little faster. He felt his palms become moist. He felt the world outside, beyond the window, move away, as if everything was now concentrated in that envelope, in that message. At that moment, carefully, she slid her finger under the flap and opened the envelope. Inside, there was a single sheet of paper, folded in three. Clara unfolded it with the care of someone who opens a treasure. And he read it. The letter read, "Dear Clara, sometimes life calls us to plant seeds where we will never see the flowers. Sometimes we spread beauty without knowing who will harvest it." His delicacy did not go unnoticed. Their stories have touched sleeping souls. For what is done with true love is never lost, from someone who also sees what others forget. Clara felt a lump in her throat. He felt his eyes fill with hot tears. She felt her chest expand, as if her heart wanted to embrace the whole world. Someone knew. Someone had noticed. Someone had read his notes hidden in the streets, in the squares, in the libraries. And more than that, someone understood. Someone shared the same silent mission. The same belief in the little things. The same faith in invisible kindness. She leaned back in her chair. He stared at the letter, at the simple words so full of force. He felt as if he had found a secret friend, a soul sister, a dream companion, even without knowing who it was, even without ever having seen his face. The letter did not need a signature. He didn't need an address, because she came from a place that Clara knew well, the place where those who see with the heart live, those who still believe that a ticket can change one day, that a smile can save a weary soul, that a story can shine a light in the darkness. He kept the letter fondly inside the blue notebook, there among their own stories, there where he belonged, there where he would be part of something bigger, something that grew with each page turned, each note left, each look touched. That afternoon, Clara did not write anything. Not because he had nothing to say, but because I just wanted to feel the immense beauty of being part of an invisible current of goodness. To be a link in a silent network of small and powerful gestures. To be, in some way, a drop of hope in the vast ocean of the world. He stayed in the cafe until sunset. The sky changed color, going from pale blue to gold, then to lilac, until it plunged into a dark blue full of promise. The lights of the lampposts came on one by one, like urban fireflies. The sound of the city died down, like a tired sigh. And Clara, there, sitting by the window, felt that she was part of that silent music. That unhurried cycle. That eternal new beginning. Before leaving the cafe, Clara left a note on the table. Without signing, without explaining. He just let him. You are a living story. Never forget the value you carry. And he went out into the night, with the notebook under his arm, his heart light, and his soul enlightened. Rua das Amoras was silent. The trees danced in the wind. The windows flashed yellow lights. And Clara walked slowly, feeling that each step was a thank you. Every breath, a prayer. Each smile, a seed thrown to the wind. She knew, now more than ever, he knew that his little stories would continue to travel, crossing eyes, touching lives, multiplying in gestures that she would never see, but that, in some way, would always be part of her. Because stories of love and hope never die. They transform, they spread, they become light, they become home. And Clara, the girl who saw what others forgot, was now certain. She was not alone. It never was. Because in every city, on every street, in every corner of the world, there were attentive hearts. There were souls who sowed kindness without being seen. And that was all. That was enough. That was the purest beauty there is. The dawn fell silently. The city, now shrouded in a thick blanket of fog, seemed to have fallen asleep for real. The windows turned off their lights one by one. The trees stopped shaking. Even the wind seemed to move more slowly, whispering only to those who were attentive. And there, in the midst of that soft stillness, Clara walked. His steps were so light that they barely made a sound on the wet sidewalks. Each step was like a beat of very old music. Every breath, a hug in the world. The blue notebook was held against his chest. She embraced him as if carrying something sacred, something that wasn't just paper and ink. It was a garden, an invisible garden, full of seeds of tenderness spread over many days, many looks, many smiles. Each story planted in that notebook had found its way to blossom in someone's heart, in a way that Clara would never see completely. And yet, she knew. He knew like someone who smells the perfume of a flower even without seeing it. He knew like someone who listens to a song even in the deepest silence. He knew as someone who recognizes the light even with his eyes closed. That night, Clara walked to the small park at the end of the street. The same park where he so often left notes hidden on benches, in tree trunks, between the cracks of toys. The park was empty. Only the distant sound of an owl cut through the silence. The ground was wet with dew, and the grass shone in the dim light of the streetlights as if embroidered with invisible diamonds. Clara chose her favorite bank, the one that faced the great tree with an open crown. He sat down slowly. He took the notebook out of his bag. He flipped through the pages slowly, like someone strolling through a field of flowers. Each story written there was a petal, a memory, a piece of the world that she had rescued from oblivion. She smiled to herself. It was a quiet smile, from those who don't need applause, of those who know that the most important thing is not measured with numbers, or with trophies, or with promises. The most important thing is in what is silent. It dwells in what is light. He lives in what is real. Clara closed her eyes. And for a moment he imagined. He imagined each note he found. Every smile planted. Every heart warmed. He saw faces he didn't know. He saw hands holding notes as if they were small torches. He saw eyes shining in the early morning, guided by simple and true words. He saw children dreaming of talking trees, old men rediscovering sweet memories, young people rediscovering faith in the beauty of small things. And he did. I knew that somehow she was part of all that every little story had opened invisible doors, created bridges, stitched ties. The park breathed with her. The trees seemed to lean their branches in a gesture of respect. The wind caressed her hair as if thanking. The ground pulsated as if the whole world was beating a single heart. There, sitting on that damp dew slab, Clara felt infinite. Not big as a mountain, not as powerful as a river, but infinite as kindness, like love spread without looking back, like the gestures that change everything, even when no one is looking. The night progressed, but Clara was in no hurry. She knew that the beauty of the moment was made of her fragility, of its brevity. He knew that that peace could not be kept in a jar, nor photographed, nor described in perfect words. It could only be lived. It could only be felt. And she felt it. I felt every heartbeat, every goosebump on the skin, every breath in the world. Before leaving, Clara took one last note from her purse. Life is an invisible garden. Every gesture of love is a flower that is born even if you don't see it. He folded the ticket carefully, and he hid it between the roots of the great tree. A silent gift for anyone who one day, by chance or fate, found it. Then he got up. He stretched out his arms to the sky. The moon was high, smiling through the clouds. The stars twinkled as if applauding his silent walk. And Clara smiled back. Because I understood. She understood that all this beauty also belonged to her. That she was part of the tree dance. From the whisper of the wind, of the brightness hidden in the early mornings. He returned home slowly, feeling that the world was much bigger, much more magical than it seemed, and that her mission was simple. Keep planting stories. Keep turning on small lights. Keep believing every day that beauty saves, even when no one sees, especially when no one sees. When she got home, Clara left the notebook open on the table. The wind came through the window and flipped through the pages gently, as if reading each line. She lay down on the bed, covered herself up to her chin, and closed her eyes. And as the night rocked her, Clara fell asleep smiling, knowing that even in the deepest sleep, their stories would continue to travel, feeding dreams, warming hearts, touching souls, like seeds blown by the wind. Like flowers that grow where no one expected. Like love that blossoms invisible, but eternal.